Welcome back. In this video, you'll understand how to externalize a configuration to a .properties file. Let me show you with example. If you see the XML which we were using till now, I'm configuring the data source being like this. Is it a good practice to hardcode the values, database connection related values inside the XML? It will be good if I can externalize these values to a .properties file. So what are the steps in externalizing? What I can do is in src test resources only, I can create a new file. I can say db-test.properties. That means the properties for test environment. Okay. Then I'll paste the values which I copied earlier. These are database URL for testing, driver name, username and password for testing. And in src main resources, what I can do is I can configure one more file. I'll say it as db-prod.properties. That means the properties related to production. So I'll give something like a production db-prod, whatever is the URL for your production. So you have two configuration files, two .properties file, one for testing and one for production. Okay. Then what I will just copy this test infrastructure -config.xml into src main resources. Okay. Oh, sorry. Just do this. I'll copy paste. I'll rename, first of all, I will rename this to infrastructure config.xml and I'll cut it from here. I'll copy from here to here. Then I'll remove it from test resources. So this file, I want it to be common for all environments. Okay. Now, instead of hard coding the value, I'll give you the placeholder. The placeholder should always start with $curly braces. And what's the key I gave for driver class name? db.driver class name is what I gave. So I'll give $ in curly brackets db.driver class name, and similarly for URL I gave the same key, db.url. So $db.url and db.user, $db.user and db.password. Okay, so I have replaced the original values with some placeholders. But now somehow I need to tell to the application context from where to get these values for placeholders. For telling that, I need to define a bean called as property sources placeholder configurer. So I'll let the class equals to property sources placeholder configurer, and I will inject I will inject a property called as location and give the value as class path :db dash. I'll hardcode right now .properties test .properties. Right now I'm hardcoding. I'll replace this hardcoding also in few minutes. So this is a way to tell the application context what is the location of the .properties file. Okay, so enough, let me test it. I'll run the test case and let us see whether everything works fine or not. Oh, some exception. What is this exception? IO exception. Oh, it was the application context was looking for test-infrastructure.config, but now I made my file name as infrastructure config.xml. So I renamed it and I am running it again. Yep, it was fine. So even though I externalized the configuration file, it was loading it. But what is exactly happening when you write property sources placeholder configure? So you need to understand some basics of life cycle. So let me tell you about the life cycle of a bean. So whenever we create application context, we are saying we are just writing something like this. I'll just copy paste. So we are writing something like this. Yep. So this is the way I configured application context in my code. So what is happening? First, the application context will load all these XML files. So first step is bean definitions are loaded. Bean definitions are loaded. Then once bean definitions are loaded by application context, all these bean definitions are passed to something called as bean factory post processors. So what are these bean factory post processors? Actually in Spring there is an interface called as bean factory post processor. Bean factory post processor. As the name says, it can contain some logic for post processing at the factory level. So if you come back, what is given as input to bean factory post processor? Bean definitions are given. But here if you see in your code, in your configuration, you have configured property sources placeholder configure. Let me control click on it. I am pressing control and I am selecting this. Let it open. Hey, this property sources placeholder configure is extending something called as placeholder configure support. Okay, I'll click on it. And if you can see this class definitely, yeah, let me see here, this class is extending again property sources configurer. Yep, see here in the chain it is implementing bean factory post processor. So this property sources placeholder configurer, whatever I configured in this XML, this is a bean factory post processor. So the bean definitions are given as input to this post processor. Property sources placeholder configurer. This is a bean factory post process and the bean definitions are given to it. So what this will do is it will look in the bean definitions, are there any placeholders? Yes. It will look for these keys inside the given.properties file and it will replace the values. Then the bean definitions are replaced with the actual values. Then starts the object creation. Objects are not yet created. Then starts the object creation here. So we'll talk about this part of the life cycle next. Understand about this part. So before the objects are created, the bean definitions, if they contain any placeholders, the placeholders are replaced by this property sources placeholder. Hey, again, I'm too lazy. I cannot remember all these big class names. So that is the reason Spring comes up with some namespaces. So instead of you writing, what you can do is you can use a tag belonging to some namespace. Let me show you how to use that namespace. I'll go to namespaces tab given here. I'll select context namespace, it is selected. Then I'll go back to source. See, context namespace is imported. For context namespace, what is the corresponding schema? This is the schema. Okay, so I can use any tags belonging to this schema. Now what I can do, I can use context namespace property placeholder and I'll give control space location is equals to, I'll give the same thing, class path colon db.test dot properties. Okay, so let me run and check whether it works the same. I'm telling that writing this tag belonging to the namespace is equivalent to writing this bean definition. Let me run it. Yep, everything worked fine as usual. So you understood that writing this tag is equivalent to writing this bean definition. So I'll tell you a few more things about what is the purpose of namespace and what is exactly happening when namespace tags are being used. Whenever you are using any tag belonging to namespace, what exactly happens in the background? Let me tell you. I told you that writing context namespace property placeholder is equivalent to writing this bean definition. So where is the code which is registering this bean definition whenever we use this tag belonging to this namespace? I'll show you. So if you see in Spring context jar, which is there in the class path, I'll just go to meta inf. There is something called as spring dot handlers. Okay, so for this namespace ending with context, what is the class? Context namespace handler. So let me open it. I am pressing Ctrl Shift T. So context namespace handler. So this class will be executed whenever we are using any tag belonging to context namespace. So we have used context namespace property placeholder. The code corresponding to context namespace property placeholder tag will be present inside this bean definition parser. Let me open it. If you see here, don't understand the logic here, but you can at a high level understand right now that property sources placeholder configurer is being defined as a bean. So whenever you see any tag belonging to some namespace, understand that there will be some namespace handler behind the scenes, and inside that namespace handler, for each and every tag there will be some bean definition parser which will be registering the bean definitions, right? So I want you to clearly have in mind, whenever you see any tag belonging to namespace, there is some namespace handler and also some bean definition parser which is registering some beans in the background. Spring wants to abstract us from all the internals, so that's the reason why Spring comes up with a lot of namespaces. You will be seeing a lot of namespace tags later. So for each and every tag belonging to a namespace, understand that this is the concept. There will be a bean definition parser behind the scenes. Actually, I have done a lot of things in Spring internally, and even I have contributed to Spring as well. So let me show you my contribution. My contribution is in Spring MVC namespace. Let me just open the corresponding jar. So there is a jar called a Spring Web MVC. If you see inside this jar, meta in Spring handlers, for every tag belonging to MVC namespace, what is the corresponding namespace handler? MVC namespace handler. Let me just try to open that MVC namespace handler. Yes. If you see, for a tag called as view resolvers in MVC namespace, this is a view resolvers bean definition parser. And if you see, I am one of the author. So actually I started and I contributed this tag MVC namespace view resolvers tag to Spring. So I am the author of this file. For this tag I have contributed. Okay, that's fine. So now you understood about the namespace handlers, okay, and also how this property placeholder tag is working on. Okay, so what you can do is now you can just open this lab documentation for this externalizing properties, and you can work on this lab. Oh yeah, before you go ahead with the lab, I want to tell you one more thing. Here I have hard-coded db-test.properties. I just want to make it dynamic. So what I can do is, I can use again a placeholder here, $db$, say, myenv. So this my env is again a property placeholder. We can pass the value for placeholders to system environment variables. So my env can be configured as an environment variable for your operating system, or you can pass this my env whenever you are running a Java program through command line arguments. So let me just run now this test case. Right now I am creating an application context and loading from this. Let me run it. It should fail. Let me show the failure as well first. See the it failed because could not load the properties. What properties? db dash by $my env. It was not able to recognize $my env. So I can pass this my env value either through command line argument or as a system property. Right now I'll pass it as command line argument. So run configurations. Then I'll go to arguments and I'll pass VM arguments -d. My env, whatever I gave that the key is equals to test. So I'm giving the value of my env as test. So let us see now. Yep, it passed. So my env is replaced with test, and then db dash test dot properties is loaded. So like that, what we can do is we can have different dot properties files for different environments, and dynamically just while deploying the application or while running the application, we can pass a value for the environment. So it will pick the corresponding dot properties file. That is also one advantage of externalizing your configurations to dot properties file. So without modifying any code, just at runtime we can change the value of my env, which you are passing as command line argument, and it will pick the corresponding file. So hope you understood about how to externalize the configuration to dot properties file. Go ahead and work on this lab exercise. See you in next video.